now begins the first ever recorded Daniel Greene video now that I'm a full-time YouTuber. Everything you've seen up until this point was not a professional. Now, professional YouTuber. Boy, oh boy. And I figured what better way to start off my new official career path than getting back to some roots here and talking Wheel of Time. And we're gonna go ahead and jump right into a Wheel of Time video I've been wanting to do for a while. And that is to pick the very best villain from the Wheel of Time. Now, this being a 14-book fantasy epic, there's a lot to choose from. And some of them are going to be spoilers, so there's a huge spoiler warning here. If you haven't read the books, you're going to hurt me in the analytics, but I need you to leave. Get out. Go. Get out! Go! And the reason that is because I need to talk about some very twisty, oh, they turn out to be villain stuff within this exact video. Now, there are, of course, a lot of antagonists to choose from, so all I did was whittle out the minor ones, and really, you're left with the core. And still, with there being just the core, there's over 20 people to choose from on this list. A lot of baddies here. But when you're talking about villains within the Wheel of Time, there's one group, of course, that come to your mind right away, and that is the Forsaken. There's a lot of them, 13 to be exact, and then an additional 14th is brought into the loop. But just going through them right now, we have Ishamael, Ravine, Demondred, Samael, Aginor, Bathamel, Osmodian, Bolal, Lanfear, Simirog, Missana, Grendel, Mogideon, and Mazrim Taim, who is ascended to the rank of Forsaken at the very end of the series. Now, there's obviously some of the Forsaken who do not float to the top of the villain bracket here. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and whittle down the Forsaken to just 5. Of course, this is going to be a subjective selection, and feel free to disagree with me here, but for me, the top 5 most interesting Forsaken were Ishamael, Lanfear, Demondred, Mazrim Taim, and Mogideon. I did consider bringing in Osmodian to this, but yeah, we get a lot more of his character, but he never really sticks around in my head as a major threat or someone who I need to worry about. And when we're talking villains, that's kind of the big deal here, and him being such a non-threat. I mean, I'm sure he is a threat, he's a Forsaken, but he never feels like one. I'm not going to bring him in. And I would say there are other honorable mentions within the Forsaken, but really, all of them are worth note. From Samael to Grendel and Missana, all of them bring something to the table, but those 5 are the most interesting to me. And if I have to cut out a bottom 2 from that top 5, so I can have 3 left to really talk about in depth, it's going to actually be Mogideon and Demondred. Now, while they certainly are huge threats, I don't feel like we know them nearly as well. They're not as intimidating or crucial to the central story as Lanfear, Mazrim Taim, or Ishamael. Now let's talk about these 3 with a little more nuance here, because each of them brings something very different to the table when it comes to what kind of villain they are. Starting with Mazrim Taim, the new kid on the block, alright? That's what he really is here when it comes to the Forsaken. He is the only one from the current age who earns a place within this ranking of the Shadow, and he's driven there by quite a few rather understandable motives. Mazrim Taim is jealous of Rand. He's also power hungry and doesn't really like being told what to do. That's shown to us again and again and again. His lust for power and jealousy of Rand's position as the Dragon Reborn is what finally drives him to join the Shadow and forsake the light. Let's adjust this a little bit, because I feel like it's not picking up my voice as well as it could over there. This turning actually was a surprise to me the first time I read the books. Not because it wasn't clearly being signed that some stuff was going on with Mazrim Taim, but I thought it was like a false signaling. It was like a false flag. But no, it was real foreshadowing. He was going to the Shadow, and I don't know, I overthought it a little bit. And while Mazrim Taim as a villain certainly brings a lot of character and power, to me his greatest asset though as an antagonist was raising the stakes of the last battle and causing that schism within the Black Tower. That schism within the Black Tower really made it feel like the Light was in a lot more trouble as the last battle began. Holy crap, suddenly one of the biggest tools for the Light, Rand's baby, something he tried to bring into the world, is being forced, into serving the Shadow in some of the most terrifying displays of the one power we see within the series, controlling someone's mind and thoughts. That's not pleasant. Next up, we have Ishmael/Moradin, the smartest man ever, apparently, within the Wheel of Time, the greatest philosopher from the Age of Legends, who went to the Shadow because he logicked it out that the Shadow will win forever with the information that he was given. The betrayer of hope. And this is a character type we've seen before in fantasy many times, from before and after the Wheel of Time. The person who's so smart, they go to the bad side. But Moradin kind of brings that to the next level, never fully being sealed away in the Dark One's prison. He's been wreaking havoc on human history for thousands of years. The fall of Artur Hawkwing's empire can be laid at his feet. He is the manipulator of mankind. He is one hell of a threat just with his mind alone, not even taking into account the incredible powers he brings to the table with channeling and his abilities within the dream world and utilization of tools of the power. The only reason our protagonists survive him earlier on in the series is due to his madness, and once he is brought back as Moradin, he reaches his true potential at a threat level. The only question left is, how much does he regret joining the Shadow, and did he possibly actually give Rand the tools he needed to win against the Dark One, deliberately or indirectly? These are all questions that the fanbase does continue to debate till today. I think the evidence to him actually betraying the Shadow at the end is a bit slim, but there is some stuff there. He certainly did, possibly involuntarily, serve a great purpose for Rand living, but Moradin is probably one of the most interesting villains to discuss in the history of fantasy in my mind, especially upon rereads of the series when you pick up on just how big of an impact he has had on shaping the world. And finally, we have Lanfear. Lanfear is the passionate lover of Luz Therin, who he abandoned and is not over it. She is the super crazy ex-girlfriend trope. She has a lot of character, self-motivation. It's mostly about love and Luz Therin, but it's there, and she goes about accomplishing it in some strange roundabout ways. Plot padding prevents her from doing certain things, but she's definitely an interesting antagonist regardless. Most of the reason I feel Lanfear deserves a spot high among the rankings of the best of the Forsaken is how well Robert Jordan actually writes her. She always feels like she is powerful and in control of the situation until our characters grow enough for that guise to finally have cracks put into it. And I like her being used as this counterbalance to help us gauge how really in control our protagonists, mainly Rand, are in of the situation based off how well they're recognizing who and what Lanfear is and actually pushing against her clear, clever manipulations. Obviously, early on when we're first introduced to her, she is absolutely pulling the strings left and right in complete control. I have like a personal smaller theory that it wasn't Rand who channeled while sleeping, accidentally triggering the portal stone. Lanfear did it, and just Loyal and Huron got taken up as like baggage, and she brought them into that situation. I've talked about that with a couple people, and I think it might have more merit than some think, but she definitely plays with Rand a lot and forces Rand closer and closer towards a path he cannot come back from, and it's mainly due to Moraine's guiding, in my mind, that he is prevented from going down such a dangerous, horrible path. But having someone who plays more of the direct mind game with our main character for a large part of the series served a fantastic purpose. But before we pick a best of the top 3 Forsaken, we need to jump over to the other categories of villains that do exist within the Wheel of Time, because the Forsaken do not run the show and arguably are not the best villains. I've broken this remaining group down into 2 subcategories, human and non-human. Obviously, there are a lot of human villains, everyone from members of Children of the Light to just, random bad guys that they're encountered throughout the day. But I've whittled it down to what I feel are the top 3 human villains that we have to deal with in the series. Again, a subjective list, and arguments can be made for other baddies to be put in this final list of humans, but for me, the top 3 were Couladin, Savannah, and Elida. Now, Couladin, a lot of people might balk at being here, but I really enjoyed his brief stint within the series. He's a fast-hitting, very quickly dealt with, who actually off-page dealt with, villain. But the ramifications of his actions are massive. When Couladin proclaims himself to be the Kara Karn, it causes a schism within the Aiel. This causes tidal waves within the Aiel culture, driving some to suicide, madness, totally forsaking the culture altogether. And this is all just rooted in Couladin's stubborn, fiery-headed determination to not let Rand be considered the legitimate Kara Karn. One of the best conversations I've ever had with other Wheel of Time fans is whether or not Couladin actually drank his own Kool-Aid. Did he believe he was the Kara Karn? Did he actually 100% get involved in his own delusions and falsehoods to the point where he was like, yes, this is me, I am it? Or was he a knowing false prophet, irrevocably damaging his entire culture just because he refused to give up to this wetlander? That is something that is so inherently human, something we have seen in real life, real history again and again, and we are constantly left wondering with these types of madmen whether or not they believe their own bullshit. But you cannot bring up Couladin without mentioning Savannah. Savannah also doesn't get much just direct FaceTime with the audience villainy, but again, her ramifications are pretty massive. And the reason I actually want to bring her into this conversation is just how horrendously evil she is. Savannah is the kind of person who knows she's committing mass harm. We get in her head, we hear her thoughts. She does not give a shit about the culture she is helping contribute to destroy. It's all about herself, her gains, her ego, and her power. She has no motives outside of just self-gratification and increasing her own standing. Again, a very human thing that reflects our own world closely. We've seen people like that. I'm sure you know people like that in your life. And while we don't get a whole lot of time directly interacting with Savannah outside of just the time Fael spends with her and when Rand has his boxy bit and there's a bit of a side with her. But I have found upon rereads, she is a character who I hate more and more. And speaking of characters I hate, there's one I gotta bring in here. Elida. And I can go ahead and declare it now, is absolutely the best villain of the just human characters. Elida sparks a level of hatred within the fantasy community rarely seen outside of Dolores Umbridge. While she does not serve the Shadow and believes she's doing the best for the world she can, again, she's an egotistical monster. And upon more and more rereads, I've found to be just rather stupid. Elida's not very bright. Someone who is gifted with the foretelling and believes that she will single-handedly save the world and Rand will be basically subservient to her, as seen by the whole box bit. Elida is a very dangerous kind of person, someone who believes they are the one who has to solve the problem. Basically, in the real world, if you ever see someone saying that no one can solve this problem but me, I'm the person, and they aren't a literal prophesied dragon, they're probably crazy, and you don't want them leading you. Especially if they seem to have a massive ego problem, which, based off the whole I'm the one who can do this thing, is likely. I get the irony of saying that in a series that literally has a chosen one, but when there's actual prophecies, the prophesied person, you know, that's different. She goes head to head with one of the most intelligent characters in the series, Egwene, and loses brutally, and her eventual taking by the Shan-Chan is one of the most cathartic endings that could have happened for her. A flat-out being murdered by one of the people who is a good guy would have probably felt a little too much because she does believe she's doing good, so it feels unjustified to flat-out murder her. So the fact she's swept up and to be placed in this other kind of hell that she will not be saved from, I'm okay with. And now we have the non-human characters. And while there are some just like interesting entities within the non-human characters like Matin Shin and Mashadar, they don't really need to be talked about because they're just like more just forces of evil nature. To me, this comes down to three choices: the Golem, Padan Fain, and Shardar Haran. And going ahead and say, yes, Fain is technically human, but including him with the humans just felt wrong to me. He's not really. Let's get that out of the way. He's twisted to a point where I'm not going to put him with the humans. Now, these three, to me, fall into three separate categories of terror. Each one brings a different kind of horror in their own right to the Wheel of Time. And let's begin with the Golem, the hunter of Mat Cauthon. Something that feels like an unstoppable force slowly following you. It will catch up it will kill you, and there's little to nothing you can do about it. Whenever Matt gets away, there's still that feeling of dread that once again, down the road, this thing will catch up, and it's just a matter of how prepared are you to face off with this unkillable monster again. That's a very specific and effective type of horror for Robert Jordan to bring to the page, and I love it. Now, the ending with the Golem is actually like where it stands head and shoulders above Padan Fain for me. While Fain is a better character all around, the Golem's ending is one of the best fist pump moments the Wheel of Time will bring to you. Padan Fain's ending is one of the biggest, the Wheel of Time will give you. But Padan Fain is an incredibly interesting antagonist to follow. Seeing him as the series progresses become more and more twisted, darker and darker, and be this creature of mystery, this shaping force of something that I love and am so disturbed by. Padan Fain has the darkest moments within the Wheel of Time within his pages. And every time he comes even close to one of our protagonists, it feels dirty, not just physically, but on multiple levels. It feels wrong. You want to bathe not only your body, but your soul. Again, great job, Robert Jordan. And then we have, in my opinion, the weakest of these three, Shardar Haran, an interesting character, someone who I do enjoy having on the page, but he's introduced so late to the series, and he does serve a clear purpose. He's some kind of hand or vassal of the Dark One. I'm not really invested in him. He's very intimidating, and his presence is there. But that's it. And I didn't even feel the need to have a cathartic ending with him. And we didn't really have one. I was just like, yeah, that's fine. So those are the three non-human. If I had to pick one from them, maybe unpopular opinion here, but I'm actually going to go Golem over Fain because of how let down I was by that ending of just having him kind of killed. Brandon Sanderson himself has even gone on the record and says he regrets writing Fain's ending the way he did, and I have to agree. And I'm a big endings guy. I really have to feel like it was worth it at the final arrival, and I just don't with Fain. And the Golem, while he wasn't as interesting throughout his entire journey, spikes up to like a 10 out of 10 for enjoyment. Now, going back to the Forsaken, I need to choose my favorite here, and if you've been listening to me talk about the Wheel of Time for any length of time, you know I'm going to go with Moradin / Ishamael. That means the final three here are Elida, the Golem, and Moradin / Ishamael. But wait, there's actually another. The Dark One. We need to talk about the Dark One. You wouldn't think I'd get through this whole video and not talk about the Dark One himself, did you? I bet you did. You forgot. To me, the Dark One within the Wheel of Time is this veil of mystery, this ultimate puppet master who is executed brilliantly. So many fantasy authors have this giant mystical figure running things in the background, but I don't think I've ever seen it done better than the Father of Lies. Whenever he interacts with another one of the Forsaken, or really any powerful character, this entity that is the Dark One just completely and utterly dwarfs them. And I think this is even enhanced by Robert Jordan's misdirect of the introduction of the Dark One within the Wheel of Time. Within the first couple of books, we think this man in the fiery mask might be him, but no. You think that was it?
Ha ha, you fool! You fell victim to one of the classic blunders!
Throughout the remainder of this 14-book epic, the Dark One is truly crafted into one of the most ominous-feeling, deepest intelligent puppet masters we have ever seen. While his lackeys may be incredibly incompetent, you can't entirely blame him for that. He has to recruit the most selfish, self-centered people on the planet. And his final encounter with Randall Thor, speaking of endings, was one I never thought I could actually see pulled off. But by God, did Brandon Sanderson and Robert Jordan do it. It is one of the most interesting and engaging final battles ever put to page. And that leaves us with the final four to choose from: Elida, the Golem, Ishamael, or the Dark One. As I previously showed with text on the screen, there's a lot of honorable mentions here, from the Prophet and the Slayer, to many of the Children of the Light, to just like Senbui, arguably. I hate that guy, but he's not quite on the level of the Dark One. Not quite. But going ahead and narrowing this down to the top two, we can definitely cut out Elida and the Golem. While they're both interesting and great within their own right, they don't hold up to Ishamael / Moradin and the Dark One, Shaitan. And now we have to choose between two very different specific types of evil, a human evil and an existential evil. And I don't think in concept one is inherently better than the other. We've seen more existential evils from the fantasy genre than I think we have the more intelligent switching to the dark side because of reasoning with Moradin we see in the Wheel of Time. And I honestly like Moradin's character more, which is almost unfair because the Dark One isn't allowed to be a character for so long, unless you consider Shadar Haran, which is a direct voice of the Dark One, to be developing his character, but that gets into a whole other level of things. And so because we get to know and understand and reason with Moradin / Shamael so much better, I'm giving it to him. Well, the Dark One is obviously more powerful, a greater threat, and the puppet master behind it all. When it comes to technically who is the best written villain here, who is the one that sets a bar higher, and who is one that is more directly relevant to what is going on, affecting us, the readers, throughout the series, it actually goes to Moradin in my mind. Even while the Dark One is locked away in his prison, Moradin is actively working to end this world, finally have complete and utter destruction so he can die and rest. A complete cynic who is done with the world and is willing to burn it all so he can be allowed to die. There are so many layers to that I truly love and enjoy. Maybe that says more about me as a person than I'd like it to, but the winner here and the ultimate villain is Moradin. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. Buy some Fantasy News merch if you're interested in all of that in the links down below. And I appreciate you and the Wheel of Time community, especially allowing it to be doing this full time. I still recorded this video after a day of work on Friday, so it's still not quite as high quality as I hope to get to, but I will be working constantly to better understand editing softwares now and things along those lines, so I can constantly be improving videos. Have a good one, y'all. Peace. And of course, I'd like to record a special shout out to my latest high tier Patreons, Trissa Tama and Bradford Wise. Thank you guys so much, and I appreciate you supporting the channel as we enter the golden age of the full-time channel.